From the chilling wail of wartime sirens to the silent relics of the Cold War, welcome to a world where history howls. Meet the Collector breathing life back into Britain's forgotten warning systems, restoring sirens, preserving secrets and unlocking the echoes of a more anxious age. This is more than a hobby, it's a mission to preserve the past, one bolt, one switch, one eerie blast at a time. How are we doing, folks? The old baby seat.
Your number one fan's not here today.
Yeah, he's not here. We're on the way to meet a couple of lads who's interested in air raid sirens and stuff like that, isn't it, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
And it's got an engine and stuff, so yeah, it's all Cold War related gear. And we're basically just going to have a look at his stuff and push a few buttons, pull a few levers, and
See what happens.
see what happens, folks. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, this. So let's head to the locations. We've got James here, folks.
Nice to meet you. Well, we'll start off, I suppose, with the big old Sirens here. So both the ones we've got here today, these are both Cold War models made by Mac. Both three-phase Sirens, so would have run on 415 volt. And these would have been around the towns and cities on rooftops or poles, military bases, those sort of places. So we've got dual end model here. So this is a 10-12 port model, and that's what gives the British air raid siren its sort of unique tone, if you like. So by this later point in the Cold War, they were mainly cast aluminium. So the stators and the rotors here are aluminium on either end. You've got a steel motor body and a cast iron base on those. So they changed over to aluminium on these because on the earlier World War II models, they used a lot of cast iron on all these end parts here, and where these had heater plates on to stop them freezing in the winter, the hot cold cycle would make those crack, and then they would shatter and disintegrate whilst they were sounding sometimes. So by this later point they'd changed over to aluminium casting on those. The smaller model here, the CS6, the single ender one, so this one's got the damper port on one end there, so this one could have done the extra fallout grey signal, which was abandoned in the end. But around 1960s the idea was they were going to have a pulse signal as well, extra, but when they realised the cost of fitting all the sirens with these dampers, they decided to go with the rock post maroons instead, just as a money saver there. So we will see bit later on some World War II models, some gents. We're going to go to a different location to film some of those, and we'll get one of them up and running for you.
Should be good. Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Basically plug it into your new...
Yes, so for the damper controls, I've got it set so we can just open, which we can hear it going there, and when it's set to pulse, if we put it on that, it should do itself a pulse. So there we go, we can hear it going.
Wow, that is...
It's a big bit of metal it's moving in there.
Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it?
So usually when that damper's open, you've got full power sound coming through, because the sirens draw the air in through here and expel the air out through here, which is what gives it its tone. So by having that damper close the airflow in, that will mute the sirens. So that would normally be given a pulse signal when that was up and running. We've also got some of the control gear here. So on the attack warning system, you'd have had various different control panels throughout the Cold War. So this would have been a street cabinet, this one here. So where you had your pole out in the street, there would have been a little cabinet down next to it here. You had all the main siren fuses in the main board there, and the contactors, and then the Vener auto railer was like the local activation switch, although the attack warning system was all done through the telephone lines. This was a backup, so they could have activated it locally as well. But we will see the whole thing running through the attack warning system a bit later on. So this was receiver signaling. This was a part of the attack warning system. So this was where the BT side of the system activated the sirens. So there were 250 main police stations around the country which had the carrier control points, which would have activated these units here, which would have started the sirens remotely without anyone having to do anything at the cabinets locally. So we will see them in action a bit later on. That same system could also send a speech warning as well, which would have come through the receiver speeches here. And then there were two different types of speakers for that. So this plasticky speaker here, so this is a later 1980s system. These would have been around in your council offices, your sort of airports, any sort of civil building like that would have had the attack warning point like that. But the rock posts had the more heavy duty one, which is just behind where you're standing now. They had the 1401, which is this more ruggedised one. Because the rock posts were known for being a bit damp, they gave them a bit more of a heavy duty one for going down into the rock posts. Next to that was a BT line tester there, so that was testing the telephone lines to the rock posts, because they weren't permanently switched on. They'd only switched the telephone lines onto them in the run up to war. So they still had a unit where they could test them. They'd also have the small yellow unit in there. The speech unit would have also have hooked into that as well. So they divided the lines for the attack warning system and for that local speech system where they could speak back to Rock HQ.
Good old timers.
Yeah, the old light timers.
It amazes me over all the years. You go to all these rock posts and they still work. The amount of, you turn up, you turn it, and you can hear it clicking away.
Yeah, they still go. Yeah, these ones will probably still click away to themselves, probably. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, still got it.
That sound.
The panel below you there, that was. These ones were more around the sort of Norfolk area on the flood siren system side of things. These are a bit later in the Cold War than the older street panel next to you there. So by this point they'd done away with the auto whaler here, and instead of using that there was just this one key switch just on the front here, where they could insert the key and just push that in, and that would start the siren. But as soon as they let go, it would just go off. So it was just to do a blip test, if you like, just to make sure it was working.
Stuff, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. So, but we have managed to power that panel up before. That is now working, that one. So it took a little bit of work to get it there. But
that's mad. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got one just outside actually, which you can see inside of. Which again is another later on panel there.
What's this red thing down here I saw earlier?
So that was just a later make-up, a copy if you like. This was from a World War II thing that I'd seen. It was for a show that we were doing, and it was actually a self-destruct for their radio.
Oh, right.
So you would just hold both buttons down simultaneously and it would set a charge off. So the idea was if parachuting troops had landed nearby, they could quickly destroy the equipment there, so it didn't fall into enemies' hands. But this one here, this panel here is a bit more of an ad hoc setup. So this one here, you'd have had more sort of military installations, if you like, that sort of thing, as opposed to in a street cabinet. It would have actually been inside the building. And that one is actually hooked up, probably should be hooked up to that little siren down there. So you should get, just a little demonstration without being too loud. Just of the attack whale going there.
That's quite, it's a nice sound, that one.
Yeah, they've done a good job on the tone of that one. It's quite similar, but it's not so loud that it's gonna blow your eardrums out on that one. Yeah.
Could you do that button again?
Yeah, so that was the attack red cycle there. So on these Venner auto whalers, they had about a 5-second on 3-second off as opposed to the 4 on 4 off which the remote system ran. I've never actually found out the reason behind that. I don't know if it was just a manufacturing thing or that's something I'll have to try and find out the reason of that slight sort of time difference in the signals on them. But for this GP3 here, this is a scaled down version of the larger Sirens out here. So this would have more been on a factory roof as opposed to doing a whole town, would have done a particular building, if you like. But they actually scaled down the ports on this, so that's a 6.5 port, so it gives a similar tone to the 1210 outside, even though it's smaller. And this one, the units on the end here, this one's still actually got its heater plates on, so you can see where the cable would have gone in either end here. So this was still designed to sit outside. And again, even on the SO4 here, the single-ended one, the connection here is for the heater plate underneath, so it's all just to stop them when they're sat out in the rain. If the temperature dropped down low and that water froze, it would just stop the rotors from going.
Yeah,
so,
I never thought about that.
So
you just think, like you were saying, the immense amount of electric used
just in heating them. Yeah. So as I say, at height of the Cold War, there was probably about 7,000 Sirens around the country. Each one had 2 1 kilowatt heater plates, and every time it dropped below 1 degrees, all those would come on at once. So you think of how much electric that was using just for them to sit there and not do anything. That's without them actually being powered up. So, yeah, a lot of power there.
Though, wasn't it?
Fret was there. That was it. Yeah. So
you got the strike command.
Yeah. So
there. It was quite in there.
Yeah.
Royal Observer Corps.
Yeah, so Strike Command, that was High Wycombe, obviously, which I think you guys have been up that way, haven't you?
High Wycombe, yeah.
So the UK WMO did have their wartime headquarters there. And on the attack warning system, that's where the actual signal would have come from to activate all the sirens around the country. So on that side of it, when they detected a strike incoming and they sent the signal, they actually used the talking clock, which we used to have in the country. I don't know, back in the 80s, remember, before everyone had a mobile phone with a thing on it, used to ring the talking clock. The reason they used that is because the cabling was already laid and it was a maintained system. If they'd have put their own system in, they'd have had to have done regular checks and fault finding. Would have cost a lot more money. But so by using the talking clock, saved the UK government a load of money. So if it had come to an event of an attack, if you'd have rung that up, you wouldn't have heard the talking clock. You'd have heard the pulses being sent down the phone line to start activating these units here, to start the sirens going. So when we filmed the carrier control point a bit later on, you'll actually hear them pulses being sent out. And that was a fail-safe on these units here to stop them inadvertently being activated by a short or by mistake. They had to receive a certain amount of S and G tones for the various units in order for them to switch on and be activated. So it would stop the system accidentally being tripped. On these later models as well, because these are full of electronic circuit boards, the reason these are just in these sealed grey units, which are all metal, was just to give them a bit of EMP protection as well. Because the earlier system, the receiver signallings were in a plastic cover, which wouldn't have offered them any protection. And when they started to realise later in the Cold War about the effects of EMP, that's when they looked at changing the system to this later version of it. So, but you can see the difference in, we do have an earlier version speaker there. So this was from the original system. This would have been pre-60s. So you got lovely little instructions still pop out inside there. And we've got its original location, Carlisle, warning point 35. So I may be able to actually do a bit of research on the warning points. We might be able to find out actually where that one used to sit with any luck. So
that's the ones you see in like Sound and Alarm.
That's it, from the older films, So that was a WB 400, where these are the 1400s later on.
Quality,
so
didn't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Although that one is metal, that one is a lot more.
That's what I mean. You've gone from like good chunky quality, and then you've got
the 1980s plastic. That's it. So, one other thing we got with the later, once we got to post Cold War, obviously they shut the attack warning system down. but they still needed some sirens kept behind as flood warning sirens, which is what that panel from there is down from. But because the attack warning system had gone, they had no way of activating it remotely, and that's when these units here came in, which actually received a radio signal through that antenna there, which was actually sent out by the BBC, would send out the signal to activate the sirens then. And they could actually, using those switches there, could actually zone and address every siren, so you didn't have to set them all off like they did in the attack warning system. They could set up an area.
With an area, yeah.
Yeah, so
I was going to ask that, because otherwise you're setting off flood warnings in places where it's not flooded.
Yeah, so that way they could just set it off in a particular area, or even, I believe, a particular siren. Okay. Just by using that addressable unit there. So that was later on technology post Cold War, though. So whether they had the technology to do that in Cold War, I don't think that's why it wasn't included on the original system. But yeah, this is what I use for running up at shows. So because the big sirens run on 3-phase, which is full 15 volt, a lot of venues I go to usually have a 13 amp plug, and that's as much as I get. So to be able to run the sirens up on a 13 amp plug, we use the inverter here, which changes it over to 415 volt. Has a slower ramp time, so rather than the siren reaching full speed in 4 seconds, it'll take about 30 seconds. But it still will get it up to full power, running it up through that unit there. So where those numbers are counted up there, that would be the hertz going to the motor, and the more hertz, the faster the motor's spinning. So when that reaches 50, that's when the siren would be at full power. Let's get there in just a moment. So yeah, you can see how long that would have taken for that siren to have reached full power, whereas usually it'll do it in about 4 seconds on 3-phase. But we can get it there off a 13 amp plug, just takes a bit of effort. So all of this unit here is basically just to get it running off that 13 amp plug. I do have a few other settings on there, so we've got a damper controller there for the CS6 outside, which is this one here. You can see the contactors fire. When I do that, that's in this unit here, sending power to them. And then we also have an auto railer there for the smaller sirens, which should be under GP3. So that would then send a 4-on 4-off to this one. You can just hear the contactors kicking in there, and that's a timer relays going there for the 4-on 4-off. So, but that's all just modern that I've made up for doing shows.
That's pretty cool.
It's a lot easier taking that than it is trying to run it up on the original Cold War equipment anyway. So, but yeah, that 10 speed, that's what we use for that. And then got an emergency stop there in case something goes wrong, and that just kills a whole lot. But yeah, so
It must have took some work to do that.
yeah, there's a fair amount. It's not quite finished yet, because there will be a second inverter going in on there soon, and we're going to try to get a whale going on the big sirens on an inverter, which is not a very easy thing to do, but that's my plan, is to get them to be able to whale on an inverter as well. So, but it's a bit of a work in progress, that one, but it's certainly good enough for the shows we do at the minute. And then the sirens just plug straight into the front of it there. That's a little GP1. So believe it or not, that was a brand new old stock. When I found that, it was still in its original box, and Seacom accidentally haven't been making those for quite some years now, so it's probably sat in a warehouse somewhere for
God knows how long.
God knows how long, but it's in really good condition, which is unusual for one of them, because usually they're quite battered when you find one of those. But yeah,
it's amazing.
So on this panel, this one's actually going back to a museum over in Hastings, but I have a friend who works over there, and this panel was sat in the back of one of their rooms there, and where it was marked heater on off, they just assumed all it was a control for the heater plates, so which sat on the end of the sirens. But on further inspection, we actually realised it was a full siren control panel inside. So this would be a much later Cold War one. As you see, everything's miniaturised down from that big street cabinet there. It's now gone down into this size. So luckily we had all the original wiring diagram inside, which was good. the thing to note on this one, they had a lot of redundancy built into these. So you've got the main contactor that actually runs the siren in the middle there. But there's actually 2 spares sat at the top which are doing nothing. So if anything went wrong with that unit and they had to call an engineer out to it, they didn't have to have anything with them. They could just take one of them off the top and put it straight in, and that siren would be working again. And again, spare fuses for the different fuse sizes inside, so everything was there for them to turn up and be able to do any maintenance on it straight away, just to make sure that siren wasn't down at all. So they were very well thought out anyway, in that respect.
I love the little diagrams where it's all hand done.
You can see some handwritten. There was a later edition where they added this pilot light later on. You can see they've actually drawn that in on pen. Yeah, so that was and the one giveaway again, it says PO equipment as in post office equipment, but by this stage it was BT running it, but they always still call it post office equipment back from the days when it was post office telephones. Electromechanical clocks in them, so you can hear with those. That would spin round under power. Sometimes probably a bit windy to hear it. You would hear it clunking in and out, and that's as the siren would be going on and off.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I've heard something like before. What's that? Is that the war department?
Yeah. Yes. That was on it. As I say, that box is in its original condition. So always a good sign. If you see that, it's usually a sign of it's something to do with
something exciting.
Something exciting. Yeah. If you like. So, but this one's just been done up as a demonstration panel. They'll be able to do it on that little siren there. Over at the museum to demonstrate it working. So.
Is that one and there's that one? They're both.
The fallout shelter one.
That's actually original.
Oh really?
Yeah. That's brand new, old stock.
Yeah.
That's good, isn't it?
Civil defence, public action signals. Yeah.
I can't hold it.
No, that's it.
Shivering as it's moving.
You've got the American Geiger counter there.
I love the colours on the American stuff.
Yeah. S10 gas mask, is that an S10? Similar, isn't it?
Yeah, possibly. Similar Geiger counter to yours, isn't it?
Yeah. It's still grey, is it? Grey-green one. Join us next week when we witness an air raid siren going off inside a house. See you then, folks.